So where's your favorite place you've ever been? Is a question travelers get a lot and is almost impossible to answer. But I'm going to answer it today anyway. So, after you've been traveling for a while, especially if you have a lot of family holiday gatherings, people, don't always know what to talk to you about. So they'll ask a general question like, where was your favorite place that you went? Or what was your favorite thing to do in X location? And you usually have favorites based on a lot of different things. Maybe it was an excursion you went on, maybe it was the people, maybe it was the food in one place. And so it's a really hard question to answer. Now, one piece of advice I have received is to sort of turn the question back on the question asker, figure out what it is that they want you to talk about and hear about. So maybe they're interested in Asia. Maybe you went to 5 locations in Asia. Ask them like, oh, well, here were a couple of my favorites. Are one of those interesting to you? And if they give you an answer, then you can just dive in and talk about that one location or that one experience that you have there. So that's one way to kind of like break it down and make it interesting for the question asker as well. But today I'm just going to give you sort of a blanket answer. Well, I'm going to give you my top 5 anyway, because again, it's impossible to break it down. I love these places for different reasons, and they're places that I would love to go back to over and over again if I have the opportunity. So I'm going to start furthest away, all the way in New Zealand, and work my way back closer to the US, where be sure to subscribe because I will be doing a video on my favorite USA destinations as well as my future bucket list, which is very long, but I'll condense it for you. So here we go. My 5 favorite destinations that I have visited that I absolutely love and the reasons why. So again, starting all the way in New Zealand, I was fortunate enough to go to New Zealand on the working holiday visa. So I did spend a year just in New Zealand, which is still kind of crazy to me when I think about it. And I tried to take in as much as I could while I was there, but it's a gorgeous, gorgeous country. I was actually just recently watching Lord of the Rings, and every time there's like a landscape shot, I'm just like, oh, New Zealand, you're so beautiful. And I think that's a big reason why I fell in love with it. I love mountains, I love landscapes, and New Zealand actually is very diverse. Some areas are very like green and lush and foresty, and then you do have more of the mountainy landscapes. You have snow and you have hot sun and beaches, and it kind of just has a little bit of everything. So I spent a lot of time, most of my time on the South Island. That ended up being my favorite, but I also spent a handful of months up on the North Island. And so as far as like a city in New Zealand goes, I really enjoyed Wellington. And that's where I spent my last few months. It's kind of a cool, eclectic, it's the capital, so it kind of has a lot going on. There's students, there's politicians, there's a massive coffee culture in New Zealand. I was not obsessed with coffee until I lived there. And now I drink it every day and I can't get enough of it. So, but they also have wineries and breweries, and the food was just like fresh and delicious, and just honestly everything about New Zealand I absolutely love, from excursions to city life to the people who are extremely friendly. And I had a wonderful experience house sitting throughout all of North and South Island of New Zealand. So very near and dear to my heart is New Zealand. I can't make a list without it because I have at this point spent the most time there. So destination number 1, New Zealand. Now, sticking in that kind of like part of the world, my surprise favorite destination was actually Seoul, South Korea. So I went to Seoul on a Hacker Paradise trip, and I think part of the reason why I really loved it was where I was in my travel journey. This was a couple months after I left New Zealand, so I've been traveling on my own for about 14 months, and I was getting a little tired. And being in a place where things were kind of organized for me. I had a built-in friend group, I had an organized co-working space. Honestly, all of that was just exactly what I needed at the time. So that definitely helped elevate it. But as a whole, I really loved Seoul. I like cities just in general. I like the busyness. I like just the constant being able to discover and find new things. Like even where our apartment was, I was still seeing places and businesses I had not seen, even though I'd walked that same route for, I mean, multiple times a day. But everything is built up. And so sometimes businesses will be on like the 4th or 5th floor, and there's just so many signs that you just miss it. So it was just really fun to just continuously discover new things. And I was actually stayed pretty close to where we lived. I mostly walked everywhere. So Seoul is huge, and there's so much of the city that I did not even get to explore. But what I did see, I really loved. Koreans were very friendly. We had some Korean buddies who were really great and really open to showing us their culture. So I also got to experience it, I think, a little bit different than other locations that I visited where I maybe didn't get that one-on-one time with actual locals. So surprise, favorite destination ended up being Seoul, South Korea, and I would absolutely love to return. Although I did find the food a bit challenging for me personally, so I don't think I could spend an extended period of time there, but definitely short term, 3 to 4 weeks was kind of perfect. Now, jumping from Asia over to the Middle East, another place that I really never thought I would visit, but thoroughly loved and enjoyed was Jerusalem, Israel. So my friend and I did a 10-day trip to Turkey and Israel, and we actually spent most of our time in Turkey, which was great. Turkey's a really cool country. It's also really big, but I really wish at the end of the day we had spent more time in Israel. It was an absolutely beautiful country. The architecture was really interesting. The food was out of this world. I absolutely loved everything I had to eat in Israel. And then getting from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I just remember like taking the bus into the city and just seeing the architecture and the design. Everything was kind of this light colored stone, and everything was kind of made out of the same local materials, and so it had this effect of being cohesive, and it was just really, really beautiful. And then my first time walking up to Old City, Jerusalem, so there's Old City and New City, walking up, seeing the huge walls and the gate, which stays open nowadays, but just, I think all these things that I had read about in stories and seeing them in real life for the first time was just, it's so old and it's so historical, and there was just so much to like take in and learn. And we did stay in the Old City, and so man, that place is a maze. we were constantly getting lost and finding new and interesting things, and I really, really loved my time in Jerusalem, and I would love to go back now that I'm kind of past the awe of the new experience and be able to like dive in a little bit more. So that was a really cool one, and a place that my friend has suggested, and so I never thought I would actually go there, but it was a really cool experience. Moving our way over to Europe, which really is where I've spent the majority of my time traveling. Other than New Zealand, I've spent the most time in Europe. So I have a lot of places that I love. I'm just love everything about Europe in general. But two of my highlights are, one is Berlin. So I went here, I was interning in London at the time, and I met my friend in Berlin for the weekend. We just did a weekend trip, and I was just blown away. Now, it was my second time to Germany, so the first time I went was Munich, and this is my second time to a different city, and we went to Berlin, and I just really loved it. It's very eclectic and interesting, and it was summer, so everyone was kind of out. There was like people riding bikes. The beer gardens were like lively and full, so I definitely visited at a really good time. The weather was perfect the whole weekend, but I also really love history, and Berlin has a lot of history that is worth checking out and exploring. But then on the flip side, we also did a graffiti walking tour, and I can't say that I knew a whole lot about like the art of graffiti before that, but our tour guide was also really good in explaining not just the graffiti and the artists and what it represented and meant, but also explaining just the different relations between the neighborhoods throughout Berlin. And I feel like I just got a better understanding of the city structure and a little bit of its history and how it had grown and changed and where it was at that time that I was actually visiting. So it's also a very friendly digital nomad city. So if you're interested in going and spending an extended period of time, Berlin is actually a very good destination. And now for my last favorite European city, Paris. I mean, it's the place I've been to the most. I think I've been there 5 or 6 times now. It's like every time I'm in Europe, I kind of find my way to Paris, at least for a few days. I never get tired of it, ever. There's, you know, this thought that Parisians or French people are rude, or I've never had a bad experience there. I've only had really positive experiences and interactions with locals, and I don't really speak French. I wish I could. I took it in high school, so I can kind of read a little bit. I can get by reading menus and street signs, but I do not speak it. Anytime I try to speak it, they're like, I literally don't know what you're saying. So again, I've never had a bad experience, and it's just a city that is just really beautiful and calm. I find a lot of calm there. I love the gardens. The gardens are absolutely wonderful. And just walking around the city, it's just a wonderful place to walk. Go get a glass of wine on, you know, the patio and just enjoy slowing down a little bit. So Paris, can't wait to go back there. So there you have it. There are 5 of my favorite international destinations that I have visited, and a few reasons why I loved each of them. Again, stick around because I will be publishing videos all this month on different travel destinations and locations. And also be sure to follow me on Instagram at Traveling Taylor. For the month of July, I will be doing an A to Z travel gram, where each day I will pick a letter and post different pictures from places I've been. So be sure to follow me there. Thanks so much for being here, you guys, and I will see you next week.